I created this video for Quicken Essentials, but it mostly applies. The only difference with 2015 is that now you have a separate icon, and when you click on it, it'll spawn a separate window where you can reconcile. Reconciling an account is a quick way to make sure that your records jive with your bank records. In short, you're evaluating a specific time frame and making sure that your register and your bank have the same identical transactions. Granted, if you download your data, reconciling may appear less relevant, but it does serve as a good means of double checking to make sure that everything has been downloaded accurately. Now, let's clear up some misconceptions. A successful reconcile does not mean that your running balance will match that of your bank's. It certainly can, but don't be alarmed if it does not. Moreover, it does not ensure that all the data up to your reconcile period was correct. We'll look at such cases later. And before we start with actually going through the reconcile process, I want to explain the math behind it. Even people who are well versed with reconciling on pen and paper are sometimes flummoxed when doing it electronically. In reality, there's nothing mysterious behind it, and the math is quite simple. So let's get started. Here is your typical bank statement. Common things you'll find are a statement date range, beginning balance, ending balance, and a list of your transactions. Depending on the account type, you might also have fees or credits. Now the math here is quite simple. You begin with your beginning balance, figure in all the transactions that have posted within your selected date range, add in any credits or debits for bank fees or credits, and you'll end up with your ending balance. Now let's apply these simple calculations to Quicken. Before you begin, make a backup. Go up to the File menu and choose Backup to Disk, and choose a location to save your file. Make sure you have the desired account selected in the sidebar, then go up to Accounts and Reconcile Account. One thing I'd like to point out is if you're familiar with older versions of Quicken, let's go to 2007, when you go through the reconcile process, you enter your information and you begin a reconcile process where you're taken to a different context where you can clear off the transactions that have cleared. If you have to modify a transaction, you have to jump back and forth between the register and the actual reconciliation window. Things are a little bit different in QEM, so let's take a look at the differences. In Quicken Essentials, the reconcile mode is no longer in a separate context. What it does is it draws an overlay over your actual register, so any changes you make here are actually affecting the transactions. To turn this overlay off, just choose Save and Finish Later. And to turn it back on, you can choose Reconcile Account. Basically, you're just toggling it off and on. Also, when you have the Reconcile overlay turned on, you'll be forced to a date sort order, and the Reconcile column will be made visible. If you prefer not to see that in your regular use, don't worry. When you finish reconciling or you turn off the overlay, the Reconcile column will be hidden again. Reconciling is quite easy. Just take the starting and ending balances within the dates from off your bank statement. Here I see it's the 21st that is the end of the period, and enter the ending balance. And you click on Start Reconciling. First thing you want to do is if you have any interest payments or bank fees as noted before, mark those as paid. Here I know I got 11 cents interest, so I'm going to mark the scheduled transaction as paid. And that was 11 cents. Save that transaction. And now let's explore the big mystery of how this difference is calculated. It's actually quite simple. You have your starting and ending balance, and there's a difference between those two. And then when you start clicking things off, I'm just going to arbitrarily select some things. You'll notice that that difference starts changing. It's really simple. All you're seeing is the difference of what I've marked as cleared compared to the difference between the starting and ending balance. Now here's where I think a lot of users become confused. The calculation of the sum of cleared transactions is all transactions from the ending balance date range all the way to the beginning of the register. If you notice, let's say, for example, this check cleared, that will affect the difference. Notice how when I'm changing it, it changes the difference. But for transactions that are after the ending date, it has no effect. So a lot of times you have to look back prior to the starting date range to check to make sure you don't have transactions that have cleared. Now, with your statement, go through and mark off everything that has cleared. Here's a tip. If you write lots of checks and trying to mark them as cleared while in date order against the paper statement is too cumbersome, I suggest you just turn off the Reconcile overlay, just choose Save and Finish Later, and then go in and sort by check number field. That way you go up and just see the checks in the correct order and just start marking them as cleared as needed. When you're done, just go back and turn on the Reconcile overlay and continue with your reconciliation process. Hopefully, you'll end up with a zero difference. If you don't fret. Use the color of this difference field to figure out where your problem lies. If it's green, that means there's more money in the account than is expected. For example, let's say I remove a payment here. That shows it's a positive green of $7.61. I'm going to mark that back as cleared. Now if it's red, that means you're missing a deposit. There's less money in the account. Use the color of this field to try to help track down where the problem lies. For this example, all the transactions I marked as cleared within the date range gave me a zero difference, so I'm all happy, and all I have to do is click on Finish Now, and it'll mark all my cleared transactions as reconciled. Now let's go back and pretend that I made a mistake keying this prior transaction. Let's say instead of 12 cents I hit the decimal and got $1.20. Notice I'm off now $1.08. You can go through and try to find this error, and I highly suggest you do, but if you get to the point that you've exhausted all your resources and trying to figure out what's going on, you can let Quicken enter an adjustment. Just click on Finish Now. It'll warn you that there's a difference, and you can choose to add the adjustment. And once done, you'll see that transaction entered in your register. Alright, we just successfully reconciled with a zero difference. Let's look at the most common question people ask. Why does my balance not match that of my bank's? Well, it may not, and there's a few reasons why. First, let's look at the different balances you can have. Let's go to the top of the register. First of all, you see the running balance column here. This includes all the scheduled transactions, even if they have not been marked as paid. You see these guys here are late, but they're still affecting the running balance. The today's balance does not include the scheduled transactions that have not been marked as paid. Now, the first reason may be as simple as that you've entered transactions since the paper statement was printed, or have downloaded transactions, and those are affecting your running balance. Another reason could be is that you have unclear transactions in the past, and those will still affect your running balance. For example, I wrote a check to this lady Tamara Stockton, and that was back in February, and she's yet to cash it. That is still affecting my running balance when I entered the transaction, but it is still not cleared, and I still will reconcile correctly. To actually show this to you, I'm going to back up to the point where I had a zero difference in my reconcile statement. Let's go back down to that Tamara Stockton check that I wrote, and I'm going to just change this to $100,000. Hit return. If you notice, I still have a zero difference. Everything looks fine here. My running balance is all messed up, and I can click Finish Now, and it'll show that there's no problems. But you notice my running balance is suddenly $96,000 in the hole. And I'm sure there's some people watching this video that are thinking to themselves, I've been reconciling for years. Everything you've mentioned are things that I already know, yet I still can't balance in Quicken Essentials. Well, there's a few things you should be aware of. How you enter your transactions has a lot to do with your success when reconciling. If you manually enter all your transactions and reconcile against a paper statement, everything should be fine. If you download your transactions and reconcile against a paper statement, same, things should work quite well. Where the problem lies is if you manually enter transactions and download them to match, then try to reconcile against a paper statement, you might have some issues. And the crux of the problem lays in the way Quicken Essentials calculates the sum of all cleared transactions. If you notice, you've got this date range here that you specify up above. You could actually drag these if you needed to. And that's what it's using to calculate when the transaction was entered. The problem that occurs if you manually enter your transactions and download to match is, let's say the paper statement was printed on one day, and while the statement's in the mail, I download and some transactions clear. Well, when I go reconcile, they're going to be all marked as cleared, and I'll never have a zero difference. And why is this a problem now when it was never a problem in the past? Well, in prior versions of Quicken, it actually used the date posted to calculate the sum of all cleared transactions. In Essentials, it's using the actual date of entry, which is likely when you actually typed in the transaction. Unfortunately, there's not really a great workaround. Yeah, you could unclear the transactions that posted while the statement was in the mail and go back to zero, but that kind of defeats the purpose of downloading to match. The workaround I use is to reconcile to an online balance. I know other versions of Quicken had this built in, but Essentials does not. I don't necessarily think it's a bad omission. The reason I say that is that the online balance that's displayed at the top of your register, that's being sent from your bank. Different banks push out different balances. Some include the pending transactions, some do not. Some calculate in only your cash outflows, but not your inflows. Obviously, that would have a serious impact on your reconciliation if you're getting a balance with pending transactions in it. For that reason, I'm not too crazy about the online balance option because it could lead some users astray if they're not familiar with what balance your bank is sending you. Now, I'm aware of what balance my bank sends me, and it's usable for online Reconcile, and I just updated earlier today, so I know my balance is current. Just go up to Accounts, Reconcile Account, and start entering the information. I saw today that it's for the date of today for the 22nd. And enter the current online balance and choose Start Reconciling. I see I have a zero difference and I click Finish Now. Now how often you do this, that's personal choice. I tend to do it once a month when my statement comes out. Some people might like to do it more often, but it's up to you. In closing, I know I can't cover everything in 12 minutes. There's just some things that you're going to have to try to figure out on your own. Hopefully this video will help you get going in the right direction. Good luck!